Want to make a podcast? Spotify's got a platform that lets you make one super easily, then distribute it everywhere and earn money, all in one place for free. It's called Spotify for Podcasters, and here's how it works. Spotify for Podcasters lets you record and edit podcasts right from your phone or computer, so no matter what your setup is like, you can start creating today. Then you can distribute your podcast to Spotify and everywhere else podcasts are heard. Video podcasts are also available on Spotify. With Spotify for Podcasters, you can earn money in a variety of ways, including ads and podcast subscriptions. And best of all, it's totally free with no catch. Ever since we discovered Spotify for Podcasters, we have had so much fun trying out all of the features like Q&As and polls that let us be really creative and engage with our audience. I highly recommend you give it a try. Download the Spotify for Podcasters app or go to www.spotify.com/podcasters to get started.
We are coming at you in back-to-back weeks because we have probably the most famous guest we've ever had on the show. And we've had some pretty famous guests, but this one tops the list. Here to promote his newest book about the royals. Want to find out who? Stay tuned. Wow. We are here with you for episode 68 of Podcast Royal, and we just interviewed James Patterson. Can we just take a moment for that, Jessica?
That was a great interview.
He was so interesting. And, listeners, come for the royal talk and stay for the Clintons and the Trumps and like things we never asked for. Our cup runneth over with James Patterson. I don't often get nervous in interviews anymore, but before we started recording, before Mr. Patterson got on the call, I was so nervous. And I don't get phased like that anymore, but he is the best-selling author in the world. So what a moment for us and for Podcast Royal.
I know. That was super exciting. And yeah, you were definitely fangirling. And I normally don't see you that nervous before an interview, but it turned out really great. It was a wonderful conversation.
Yeah, it really was. And before we get started, we have just a super brief royal rundown today, but I wanted to say thank you so much to those that have reached out after I shared my heart and my news last week. If you want to know what we're talking about, you can go back to episode 67 and see what I mean. I do not want to get into that again because I'll start crying. The funeral is on Saturday, but I am so thankful for everyone's kindness, and thank you so much. You make me believe in the good of this world again. So thank you. And thank you to you, Jessica. Since we recorded last, you and I had dinner. You brought me a plant that it's been a week and I haven't killed yet. So that is so fantastic. That's pretty good for me. So you know what I think we should do? We haven't done this in a while. We should reintroduce ourselves because who knows who James Patterson is going to bring in. So I am Rachel.
And I am Jessica, and Rachel and I are two friends based in Birmingham, Alabama. And during the pandemic, we started, getting together at a restaurant. We would eat outside and chit chat and catch up. And the world was kind of shut down, and we were looking for something to get involved in. And one thing we loved chatting about when we went to dinner with the royals. And So one night, the idea for this podcast was born over dinner, and it's been so much fun the past almost 2 years now.
I was thinking about that when we were chatting with Mr. Patterson earlier, and I just cannot call him James. Like there's something about him, like I cannot call him James. But we're almost rounding the bend to our second anniversary, which is in November. And so that's wild. And, hopefully many more to come. But before we get into the meat of the episode, we always start each episode with a little bit of what we're into. It's a little bit of levity from royal life and kind of introduces a bit of pop culture or whatever's going on in our lives into the mix other than the royals. So what are you into this week?
Well, it's definitely not pop culture coming from me this week. So This week I am into morning walks and summer minestrone. So I know that sounds weird, but let me explain. I don't typically wake up super early in the morning. I'm not like a morning workout kind of person. But recently, I don't know if it's just like, in the summer, the sun comes up early, the weather is nice. And there's been a few mornings where I've just naturally awakened before my alarm. And, I was laying in bed and I was like, I can go back to sleep or I can get up. And so I decided to take a morning walk, and I've done it a few times, and it's been really nice because, it's not super hot outside yet. The sun is out. It's really quiet. One morning I was even out walking and I actually came up on a deer
Oh, wow.
out, and it trotted off in front of me pretty quickly, but it was really fun to see and just a great way to take in some nature and some vitamin D before the day gets started. So I've been doing that when I do wake up before my alarm. And then the other thing that I have been into is making minestrone soup. That's like an Italian vegetable soup. And I do this almost weekly, or I've been doing it this summer. So this is a really good way to clean out the fridge with leftover produce that you might have at the end of the week. I just kind of threw together my own recipe, but basically I chop up whatever leftover summer veggies I have. Typically, it's zucchini, potatoes, onions, garlic, carrots, bell pepper. And then I usually have a bag of shredded kale and, some chicken broth or something on hand. And then one night, if you don't feel like cooking a big elaborate meal, put all those veggies in a pot, make a soup. And then one other thing I like to do is add a spoonful of pesto on top when I put it in the bowl, and it's just a great extra punch of flavor. So I'm hoping that has inspired someone out there to join me in morning walks and summer minestrone. But that's been what I've been up to recently.
Jessica, you remain #goals for me. I mean, goals all day. Way to prioritize your physical health, cooking, all of the things that I say someday I will do that as I, continue on almost 36 years and don't make that a regular part of my routine. But I love that. And you have a great neighborhood to walk in as well. Like I love your neighborhood so much. I'm actually about to move on September 1st, not to your neighborhood, but if there were ever an opportunity to move to your neighborhood, I would do that in a heartbeat.
Well, come join me for a walk anytime. You're
Yeah,
all
what time though?
well, we don't have to do it at like 6 a.m. We can do it anytime. But I'm super
Yeah.
excited about your move too, and you'll have to tell us all about that when that happens.
Yeah, so well, and we'll get to this, but we're gonna do our summer break. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So let me talk about what I'm into this week. So I had the chance to catch mine is actually Royals related this week, which is not always, usually is not. I caught an advanced screener of The Princess, which is a new documentary about Princess Diana that will be available on HBO Max on Saturday, or September, August 13th. It will be available this upcoming Saturday, August 13th. We are obviously going to be seeing a lot of Diana content for the rest of this month in the lead up to the tragic 25th anniversary of her death on August 31st. In fact, most of our interview with Mr. Patterson is about Diana and about the 25th anniversary. This documentary, The Princess, is definitely worth a watch, listeners. I highly recommend it. I am obviously into the fact that we have James Patterson on the show today. He has written a new book, Diana, William, and Harry, the heartbreaking story of a princess and a mother, which is out August 15th, which is next Monday. I read it in one sitting and I just gobbled it up. But before we get into the rest of the show, including our interview with Mr. Patterson, I want to do a little housekeeping and tell you that as we typically do in August, normally we would actually be on our summer break. Right now, we kind of follow the lead of the royal family and they take off the month of August generally, but we are dipping into mid-August because of my Europe trip, then my COVID, and then to recognize this milestone anniversary with Diana. But as we typically do in August, we are going on vacation for a month. So I have a funeral this weekend. I'm in the middle of a move, which will happen on September 1st. You are about to go in a couple days on a much deserved vacation. And I think I can speak for both of us when I say we both need a reset to come back September 14th, ready and raring to go. So we're going to be off for slightly over a month. As I said, the Royals are on summer holiday anyway. They're at Balmoral or wherever they're traveling. So there's not a ton for us to tell you right now anyway. So that's a little housekeeping. This will be our last episode until mid-September. So any other notes on that before we get into your fashion pick of the week?
No, yeah, we'll be on a little break and we'll try to stay active on our Instagram when we can, but we definitely do need this time to reset and it's a good time to do it since our Royals are on break. Of course, if anything super exciting happens, we'll be sure to keep everybody posted.
Yeah, if anything major happens, we'll come back. But typically, this is a really quiet time of year for the Royals. So we're going to take advantage of that and do some resetting ourselves. I know that I personally need it. And everybody deserves a little break sometimes. So let's get into segment one, which is your fashion pick of the week.
Okay, so my fashion pick of the week is not so much a pick, but more an interesting discovery that I happened upon this week. So I saw an article recently that highlighted Meghan Markle's outfit from the Platinum Jubilee service of Thanksgiving event at St. Paul's Cathedral. Listeners, you'll probably remember Meghan wore that like muted grayish white Dior coat dress, and she had a matching hat and heels, very monochromatic look. And I think I remember us commenting on the pod that we really liked that outfit that she wore for that event. Anyway, this week, the internet has once again dug deep into the archives and found a strikingly similar look worn by another royal wife that was actually not Princess Diana. I know we talk a lot about them, both Meghan and Kate, kind of giving nods to Princess Diana, but this royal wife was Wallis Simpson, the wife of Edward III, and she actually wore an almost identical dress by Givenchy and Balenciaga back in 1951. And Rachel, I've got the photo pulled up here so you can look at it.
No, that's wild. But hold on a second. First of all, I think you misspoke on accident. It's Edward the Eighth, but
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
no,
Edward.
you're fine. It happened. Mistakes happen, but it's by Givenchy and Balenciaga because I know Megan's outfit is Givenchy, but it's interesting that is Wallace is by both. Interesting.
So, well, I actually okay. Well, let's fact check here because I read online that Megan's coat was Dior.
Oh, I'm sorry. You're right. You're right. You're right. That is my mistake. It is Dior. You're right. I'm thinking, sorry, I'm thinking of another outfit. Yes, this is Dior. This is Megan is in Dior at the Platinum Jubilee. It's that white outfit. Listeners, we need to put this side by side on our Instagram because that's crazy. I mean, this is like from the collar to the gloves to the belt.
It is truly, I mean, an
That's
almost
wild.
identical look. You can tell Megan's collar is a little bit bigger. Um,
Yeah.
but so my thought here is, what do you think about this? Do you think it was intentional? Do you think Megan was trying to send a message with this, or do you think she even knew when they picked this dress out?
I mean, I have no idea. I don't know how, I don't know if Megan goes deep into the Wallis Simpson archives. I have to tell you that I don't go deep into the Wallis Simpson archives. Diana, yes, the Queen, yes, Princess Margaret, yes, but I mean, I don't really, comb the internet for pictures of Wallis Simpson, but this is kind of taking my breath away a little bit because if it's not intentional, then man, that's a weird coincidence because there's the whole thing. The only difference obviously is that Wallace Simpson is not wearing a hat, but that doesn't take away from the fact that these looks are strikingly similar. Okay, but play devil's advocate. If she is looking at this picture of Wallace Simpson and using it as style inspiration, I wish on the Wallace Simpson picture we could see where the dress cuts off,
So I did
because
see another full length picture, and I want to say, if I remember correctly, I think Wallis Simpson's was a similar length, but I don't know that the skirt was as full. I feel like it was a little more
yeah,
fitted.
it looks like Wallace's skirt is, very A-line and close to the body, and Megan's flares out a little bit. Wow, that's I want to know who on the internet has some has this kind of time, because I want to be that person to have this kind of time to comb through. But I mean, yeah, it's uncanny and undeniable that these looks are very similar. But what do you think she would be trying to say? If, let's say that she found this photo of Wallis Simpson and said, Dior, do this for me. What do you think the message would be, though?
I don't know if Meghan actually knew. I don't know if she knew about this. I feel like it's obvious that the dress designer knew this. I mean, I don't know how they wouldn't. This is a clear replication. So somebody knew. Now they may have showed Meghan and she may have signed off on it, and been okay with it, but I don't think this was a complete accident. I mean, there's
The
no way.
sleeves are a little different. Wallace's sleeves are cuffed, but I mean, it's
Meghan's it's more of a modern take, honestly. It's a
yeah.
almost identical modern take on Wallis Simpson's dress.
Wow. Yeah, you put this on the Instagram, because this is striking. I think this is the first time I've ever seen, actually, that I can remember anyway, a side by side of Wallis Simpson with a current member of the royal family. That is striking. Wow. That's a whoever found that. That's very fascinating.
Yeah, so we'll post it on Instagram, and listeners, comment and let us know what you think, if they were trying to send a message, or if you have any thoughts on it.
That is interesting. Well, you've just done blown my mind. And I like, and thanks for including the photo, because as a reference, because that obviously helps so much. I mean, to the side, yeah, listeners, you'll see this on Instagram whenever we post it. It's pretty striking. Wow. Okay. Well, let's move into, that's your fashion pick of the week.
It sure is.
Okay. Um, well, I guess that Meghan's wasn't that long ago. I was going to say that's a major throwback, but Meghan's was from June, so a couple months ago. But let's move into a pretty brief segment 2 royal rundown. So the day, speaking of Meghan, after we've just compared her look to Wallis Simpson's, the day after our episode dropped on August 3rd last week, it was Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex's birthday. She turned 41. So happy belated birthday, Meghan. We put a post up on our Instagram about that. I was pleased to see William and Kate, as well as Charles and Camilla, send her well wishes via social media. A lot of tongues were wagging that Her Majesty did not, but I'm not going to read too much into that, because Her Majesty's on vacation, even though I know it's not, the Queen sitting behind Instagram or Twitter. Actually, I very unlikely that it's her that is actually posting. But Meghan spent her birthday privately, surrounded by quote unquote family and dear friends. That's all we got. And Princess Beatrice had a birthday this past Monday, the 8th, and Princess Anne's is next week, the 15th. So mix in those happy occasions with the sad occasion of Diana's landmark anniversary this month. And we've got a lot of dates to mark. And I know we talked about this last year around Diana's death anniversary, but I want to share again. Do you remember because we're going to talk to Mr. Patterson about this in a minute. Do you remember where you were, what you were doing? We were young. I was 10, so you would have been 10 as well, or 9.
Yeah, I think I would have been 10 as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Because it's right before my birthday when I turn a year older than you. But do you remember how you found out?
um, you know, I have a vague memory of like that period and her death. I mean, I remember like her funeral and Elton John's song that was released, and some little trinkets that they were putting out around the time of her death. I've got actually a little thimble I think my grandmother got or my grandparents got when they went to England, of Princess Diana, that's got her birth date and death date on it. I don't remember where I was when I heard the news, but I do remember that time, and just all of the you know whatever was going on in media and all the chatter about it. Back then, I wish I could remember where I was when I had heard it.
Yeah. Well, I think my situation's unique because my mom was such a fan of Princess Diana, and the trickle down effect of that was I, and I was also so in love at this point with Prince William, who, I would say was pretty much it from this time until probably he was out of college. It was like his peak handsome years, if I do say so myself. But listeners, before I tell my story, we'd love for you to write in, either DM us on Instagram at Podcast Royal or email us at hellopodcastroyal@gmail.com and tell us where you were. And we just might read some of them on the air. So tell us your Diana story, especially if it's fascinating. But mine is, so I was 10, my birthday September 25th, so I was about to turn 11. And we, at the time, I was born and raised in Kansas, but my mom got a job transfer to San Antonio. And that weekend, if I'm not mistaken, that was Labor Day weekend. And we were down in San Antonio looking at houses. We ended up moving in December of 1997. We were looking at houses and we were staying at a hotel. And I remember that afternoon, I had swum in the pool. We had gone to dinner at this restaurant that I recently learned closed down in San Antonio. If any of our listeners are in San Antonio, you'll understand my devastation. It was called Sea Island. It was the best seafood I've ever had. And so we ate at Sea Island. We came home. I was asleep in the bed because this happened. I was 10. So, this happened. If she died at 4 a.m. Paris time, that would have been about 9 p.m. our time. And so anyway, I woke up and I saw that there had been a car accident and that Dodie had died. And, I, even at that tender age, I was super into, like, all the tabloids. Like, I would go read the tabloids while my mom grocery shopped. And, like, I was just really into celebrity news, even at that age. And I remember being really shaken that Dodie had died. And then I fell back asleep and I woke up and my mom was crying. And I said, "She's dead, isn't she?" And she just nodded and said yes. And so that is how I found out. And then by the time of the funeral, which was that next weekend, that next Saturday, September 6th, we were back in Kansas. And mom and I watched the funeral together and just cried and cried and cried. And when I watched the Princess documentary this past weekend, it shows the funeral and the boys at the funeral, William and Harry at the funeral. And in particular, Harry looks so young and just so incredibly sad and vulnerable. And like the card that said mummy and all of the memories. And so, we honor Diana always on this show, I think, but especially with this tragic anniversary. So we'll talk a ton more about Diana in our interview, but I just, I always find, because it's one of those moments, like, I wasn't obviously alive when JFK was assassinated, but it's just one of those, I think it's one of those cultural landmark moments where if you were old enough to remember, where you were. And so, listeners, please write us and let us know what your story is, because I know some of you have interesting stories.
Well, thanks for sharing, Rachel.
Yeah.
Of course, I've heard that before, and I'm sure our listeners who have listened for a long time now have maybe heard that. But it's good to revisit and kind of share those memories, because we've got a lot of new listeners that have joined us lately.
We do. We've grown a lot in the last year, so maybe we won't share it again next year. But here we are again for a second year.
Well, speaking of other important dates, you mentioned Princess Beatrice's birthday. I was actually scrolling Instagram yesterday, and what popped up on my screen was a photo that Edo had posted. It was a really sweet birthday shout out to his wife. And so he shared a photo of her in this like black leather jacket. It looked like they were on the water. I don't know if they were in a boat or something, but in his caption, he said, "You are the world's best wife. Along with this, you are the best mother in the world. We love you so very much. Happy birthday, my darling." And at the end of the message, he added a heart emoji and the number 8. So I'm wondering what that little secret message meant.
Well, I bet I can tell you.
I was going to ask you, is it something special between them?
Well, she was born on 8/8/88, so that would probably, I would guess, be her lucky number if she had a lucky number. August 8th, 1988 is her birthday, so I would say 8 is an important number to her.
Good call out. Yeah, I was sitting there thinking, and like, oh, it didn't even dawn on me because, I should have known that. But I was like, let's see, an 8 is kind of like a sideways infinity symbol. I was like going through all these things.
Also that.
I was just wondering what you might have meant. So I'm glad you have solved the mystery for us. Listeners, Princess Beatrice turned 34 yesterday. So happy birthday to be. And I thought that was a cute message. I wanted to mention that.
You can always count on Edo for that romance. I really love Edo and Beatrice as a couple there, and Edo is always so sweet. He's one of the few royal guys that has an Instagram, and usually posted some never before seen pictures on her Instagram for her birthday. So just a lot of love all the way around. So yes, happy slightly belated birthday, Beatrice. And just really quickly, I want to follow up on a news story that we talked about on the show before. So an intruder armed with a crossbow who snuck onto the grounds of Windsor Castle on Christmas Day. Listeners, you may remember this. I know we've spoken about it on the show, and obviously it made headlines. This individual, who I'm not going to name because I don't like to give any airtime to criminals, but this individual has been charged, and he will appear in court on August 17th. So I'm glad to see justice being served here, and hopefully it serves as an example that you can't just walk on the grounds of Windsor Castle with a crossbow with the Queen and Charles and Camilla inside. So at least things are moving in that regard.
Well, we've got one more story on the Royal Rundown today that we want to mention. So I thought this was really fun to see. Catherine, the Duchess of Cambridge, was named #1 on Tatler's Best Dress list for 2022. So, of course, that's great news to us since we are big fans and we love her fashion. And we definitely agree that she's been nailing it lately in the fashion department. I did want to mention, though, they chose a photo of her in one of her current favorite polka dot patterns. But I found
No
myself
comment.
the dress. Well, okay, so this was the white dress that she wore at Royal Ascot. And I know we like to tease about the polka dots, but I thought it was a really lovely photo. And I was wondering, are polka dots starting to grow on me? I'm not sure.
Uh-oh, you're getting infiltrated. The Kate effect is taking over your mind.
I know. So I would be open to maybe seeing if I could incorporate something into my fall wardrobe, but no promises.
Don't you dare jump off this ship with me and leave me here alone on this ship. But I will say that look in particular was super inspired by Princess Diana. And so when she does it like that, I don't mind it so much, because if you talk about a side by side, Diana wore it to, I think it wasn't Royal Ascot, it was another horse race, Epsom Derby or something like that. And in 1986, if my memory, I wrote a story about it from Marie Claire, and the looks are strikingly similar. So that one I can stand, but it's just overkill. I'm not going down this rabbit hole again. But anyway, don't jump off the ship with me, man. Leave me all alone here. But okay. But
well,
huh?
No promises. I mean, I would have to come up with a really great version.
Yeah.
But anyway, the article does ask what a modern Duchess looks like. And the answer provided by Tatler was everything should be perfectly tailored, embracing current catwalk trends through a lens of appropriate dress lengths and classic silhouettes. Oh, and plenty of Alessandra Rich. So that was a fun little quote. You can find the top 10 best dress according to Tatler online. You can just Google search that article and it'll pop up.
I completely agree with this pick. I'm a huge fan of Kate's fashion. So congratulations to the Duchess of Cambridge. And as we said, it's light news week this week. And that's why we're taking August off, because it would just be like this every week. But let's get into the main event. Here is our chat with none other than James Patterson. Take a listen. Today on the show, we have the world's best-selling author, whose latest, Diana, William, and Harry, the heartbreaking story of a princess and a mother, will be released August 15th, just in time for the milestone 25th anniversary of the Princess of Wales' death in a Parisian car accident on August 31st, 1997, at the tender age of just 36. I'll be 36 next month, so that's especially poignant for me. So James Patterson is here. He is a legend. You know this man. His books have sold over 400 million copies. He created characters we love like Alex Cross and Michael Bennett, as well as the Women's Murder Club series. He's also collaborated with little-known individuals you may never have heard of, like President Bill Clinton, Dolly Parton, to help launch their literary careers. No big deal. Very kind of you. Mr. Patterson, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome to Podcast Royal.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Let's get into it.
Let's do it. So, okay, it's an honor to have you here today. This book is nonfiction, but it reads like a suspenseful James Patterson novel that we've all read and we've all loved. And it's about real people, though. And sometimes the truth is stranger than any fiction, as I'm sure you well know. Such is the case with many parts of this story. So please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is your first foray into the wild, wild west of writing about the royal family. So why tackle this topic and what drew you to this?
What I try to do in the nonfiction that I've done, which ranges from, Jeffrey Epstein's story, which I did in 2016 before actually he was infamous or as infamous, to Walk in My Combat Boots, which is about the military. And in this case, what I didn't think the world needed another book about her as a princess, but her as a mom, I don't think that story has really been told. And what I try to do in all my nonfiction is to just tell story after story after story. I mean, kind of make a movie for people, just scene after scene after scene, and try to get people to understand who she was. And I don't think a lot of people think of her as a mother and how important it was to her and to her survival when she was in the royal family. So that's what got me into it. And my wife has always been a big fan. Fan maybe isn't quite the right word. So she was very interested in anything about Diana, and a lot of people are. But I was particularly interested in her as a mom, how that the nature of the royal family. I mean, at one point she would sleep on the floor with the boys and all sorts of really mom kinds of things, and the queen didn't understand it, and she said, there are millions of housemates we could have here doing that stuff, and that's a wonderful quote because it gives you a sense of how out of step she was with the royal family. They had a way of doing things. That's the way Charles was brought up, and she didn't want to do it that way. She wanted to have a normal, whatever normal means, but a normal kind of family, and that was really important to her.
Yeah.
Your research for this book was really extensive. Can you walk us through how you approached researching for this story?
Well, I think the biggest thing, I did some interviews, but the biggest breakthrough was getting a hold of or being aware of the UK press archives. And the UK press online, they have something like 2 million searchable pages. It's an incredible amount of information. It's what reporters and commentators had to say about Diana all the way along through her years in as Charles's wife, and most of that information has never been released in the U.S. So a lot of this will be new to people. Some of it will be familiar. But as I said, a lot of it, especially in terms of her and her experience with the boys, and I think this book gets at sort of the heart of who she was. It gets at her soul. It gets out of the core. And she said, and it's in the book, that the first time that she experienced true happiness was when she held William in her arms when he was a baby, and she had been a nursery school teacher, so that was really close to her anyway. And so that's very special. The other thing, something that surprised me was she had a real sense of fun and a little naughty. in a cool way. She used to, when William was in prep school and whatever, she used to send him these kind of, semi-dirty cards with very warm sentiments in them. And when he was 13, which was pretty cool, he came home for his 13th birthday. And she had all these famous models who, his pictures had been on the on William's wall. He showed Claudia Schiffer and Christy Turlington and Naomi Campbell, and she invited them to birthday party. Just William and Harry and these three models.
I mean,
and that was kind of cool. And the birthday cake that she gave him was in the shape of a breast. So that's cool. I mean, that's like kind of a neat mom. And after she died, the boy said she was the best mom in the world. And I don't think people necessarily see her that way, but the boy sure did. And I think that's what makes this story special.
Yeah, I mean, I've always seen her as a wonderful mom. And that anecdote about the supermodels, only Princess Diana could have pulled that off. Let me tell you. But you're right. Jessica and I are both royal reporters, and there are anecdotes from this book that I had never heard of. And so if we're saying that, and we study the royal family inside, outside, backwards, forwards, then a casual reader, you're right, is going to learn so much. There's so many great details from the book, like Diana spilling perfume on her wedding dress. She was nervous.
Yeah.
This one, Mr. Patterson, this one killed me. The fact that Charles was a master gardener, yet never brought Diana a single bloom. That broke my heart a little bit. Or I had never heard this one either. When Diana jolted awake from a recurring dream about Charles's coronation, when his crown fits, but hers does not, leading her to believe correctly that she would never be queen, which of course she ended up saying in that infamous Panorama interview in 1995. So I would love to know, what was the most surprising thing you learned from your research?
I think just how she loved to have fun. I mean, I thought that was really a neat thing. But there are different little things here which just tell you so much. Just little things, like sometimes you'll just be with somebody and you kind of get them, or you get their situation so much better than you did. And one of the quotes from Charles, it just really got into where he was at in terms of, he's supposed to be, falling in love with somebody, and the press was bugging him about Diana. This is before they were married. And he said to them, he said, "You mustn't rush me. I mustn't get it wrong, or your lot will be the first to criticize me in a few years' time." And that's how he's choosing the person to be with for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
And I think it was true to and that's part of the reason that she had so much trouble with the marriage. I think she threw herself into it. I think she wanted to raise children. I think she wanted to love her husband and be loved back. I think she was willing to, she from afar, she loved the idea of being a princess. But when you actually get into it and all the duties and being watched like that, you suddenly go, be careful what you wish for, because this princess thing isn't all that people think it is when they're like 10 years old. Yeah.
In the book, you write, Diana's starting to find her voice, her actions growing braver as her compassion is sparked.
Yeah.
How did compassion and empathy help Diana find her power?
Well, I think that, she realized at a certain point that being a mother was working for her. Being a wife was not working for her. The restrictions put on her by the crown, that wasn't working for her as well. But I think she found that she could get an outlet in terms of charities, and so that became a huge deal for her. And it was a way. I mean, she was famous, and suddenly she realized, I think, how popular she was, and how people loved her. And I think she took she liked that. Who wouldn't like that? I mean, most people like being loved up to a point. And but I think she threw herself into the charities, and she tried with the boys to normalize their lives as much as she could. She, she would take them to homeless kitchens and whatever. And there was one incident where one of the homeless men sort of scared Will a little bit. And she said, look, not everybody's going to love us. And I want you boys to understand that, we're incredibly lucky in so many ways. I mean, we have money. We don't have to worry where the food comes from. We, get driven around. We have nice cars. We have a wonderful life, but it's not that way for most people. And you need to understand that. And she would bring them to McDonald's, and I think she brought the Queen there one time too, and the Queen didn't get it. She said, "Well, the hamburgers really aren't that good." And Diana said, "That's not the point. They love the Happy Meals, and the Happy Meals are all about the toy in the Happy Meal. It's not about the hamburger."
Exactly.
Really. And that's delightful, and I think a lot of people can relate to that when you kind of get behind the scenes and see the real person. I have been lucky in that, as you mentioned before, I've worked with the Clintons. I've done some things with the Bushes. I know the Trumps a little bit, and the humanity always surprises people. For example, the first time my wife Sue and I went out with the Clintons for dinner, and it was a long dinner because we get along nicely and we're fun, and we don't talk about politics at all. I don't talk about politics to any of them.
That's probably smart.
Well, I don't know. It keeps your sanity and keeps the conversation in a good place. But during that evening, the first time we were out, the president and Hillary were holding hands 3 or 4 times during the meal. And people don't think of them that way. I mean, obviously, it's been a complicated relationship, but there's love there. Trump, when he's in his golf cart, if the kids call, he'll be like, "Hey, sweetheart, how are you?" He talks to them that way, which is interesting. The Bushes, I went to, Barbara would have her literacy things. I went to a couple of those, and they're just they were very funny together. You just you see the humanity, which is, and that's what I think happens, hopefully, with this book. You feel the humanity. You feel her struggling to hold this marriage together, but you feel her love for these boys and their love for her. And when she tried to protect them, and Will did not like, which is interesting because he went from being sort of a wild whirlwind Will, they called it, when he was a little kid. He was all over the place. And one time he tried to flush Charles's Gucci loafers down the toilet. It's not a bad idea. And there's one scene in there where they're having a little holiday in the British Virgin Islands, and the press are everywhere with the click, 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 click. And the boys decide they want to throw water balloons off the hill there at the boats that the press were in. And she gets right with them, and she says, "Yeah, and I'll be your chief loader." So she would get the balloons ready for them, and they throw water balloons at the press down below. I'm sorry, I know you guys are press, but water balloons won't hurt you that much.
Well, yes and no. We're not photographers, so we wouldn't have been at the British Virgin Islands chasing them. But you said this, and you're right. The book reads like movie scenes, right? And it's just short chapters, and it's just really good. And I love the scene, if you want to call it that, because obviously it's not a movie, it really happened, where Prince Philip, who is Diana's father-in-law, is talking to Diana. He says, "If you don't behave, my girl, we'll take your title away." And she retorts, perfectly timed, "My title is a lot older than yours, Philip." And that's like, yes,
she was
Diana,
smart.
go. And so I'm wondering.
There's another nice scene there with Philip, though, where he's playing with John Kennedy's son. And he was very warm with the boys. I mean, he was clearly a very traditional approach to the crown and the royal family, et cetera. But he also was very close, and he had some real warmth with the boys, and I think they loved him a lot.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that like these characters are real people, so they're multifaceted, they're complex. Like obviously this show's been around for going on 2 years. We mourned Philip's death last year. We love Philip, we love Diana. It's a family, right? And so I'm wondering, you talk about humanizing people. Was it difficult to write characters that everyone knows, like Diana, like Philip, William, or Harry?
Obviously I had a lot of help because there was so much information, so many stories. I mean, I think that one of the difficulties with this is deciding what to put into the book. And this isn't one of these biographies where it's going to go on for 1,000 pages and you're going to know more than you want to know. These are just different stories that struck me that it would reveal something about the people. That's what I was the most interested in. What is the effect of, what is it like being in the royal family? What's the positive? Obviously, you would think that this tradition that for a lot of people in England, it's a good thing. It's useful. It helps to hold the country together when things aren't going well. Obviously, during the wars, it was very useful. And a lot of people believe in it. Some people have issues with it. But when you have to sacrifice for that, obviously Will is willing to sacrifice for it and to become, presumably to become king at some point. Mm-hmm. Harry, at a certain point, just said, my wife and I, we can't do this. We have to get out of here. Got to get out of the country. In which obviously they've done. And it'll be interesting to see where that goes over time.
Oh yeah, no kidding. We follow it every day.
I'll bet.
Well, another thing I found interesting in the book, you detail that Diana made tapes before her death.
I love that. I love that.
That's so wild.
Yeah.
She obviously had no idea who these future wives would be. And I just found it interesting that she called it a one-way chat. Do you think that?
Well, sure, that's what it was. I mean, I don't think she saw her mortality there, but she knew that. I mean, she's just talking, and they don't get a chance to talk back. No, I love that. In fact, I have a couple of friends who have done, those kind of tapes, so that grandkids or whatever will sort of know who they are, which I think is terrific. But she says, she says a lot of things, but welcome to the royal family, or the family business, she calls it, which is pretty funny. And she says, and this does, cherish your children for me. They carry my heart. Let them know I love them and will always watch over them. So, there's a little sense of maybe her wondering, how long she'll be around. But I love that notion. And I just wrote my autobiography, and I was very close to my grandmother. And one of the things I say in there is, if my grandmother was alive, she'd be 114. But as long as I'm writing about her, she is alive. You know what I mean? Which is kind of cool. I love that as a way, and it's a useful thing even for people listening. That idea of, we're going to put down some tape so that the kids will remember us better, and maybe kids that aren't around after we're gone will have a flavor for who we were.
Well, to that end, about her mortality, you write in the book that during her last summer, the summer of 1997, of course, her friend Gianni Versace is murdered about 6 weeks before her own untimely death. So she asked, you detail this in the book, she asked one of Dodi Al-Fayed's bodyguards, do you think they'll do that to me? So do you think at all she had a sense?
Sure. I don't. I think we all have a little bit of that kind of, every once in a while we'll go like, I wonder if I'll last through this car ride because my son drives too fast. But it's certainly in the way they drive over there, you do wonder a lot of times whether you're going to survive a car ride. It reminds me of a little funny thing with all the funerals that they go to. President Clinton goes to a ton of funerals, and I kid him about that. But there's another friend of ours who was the Prime Minister of Canada, and he goes to all these funerals, and his line is, "You die, I fly."
I remember. I've heard that before.
Yeah.
Well, Charles and Diana's divorce was finalized on August 28th, 1996, and her death was 368 days later. How would you describe that last year of her life, and specifically that last summer?
I think it was chaos for her. I think she was really desperately trying to find herself. I'm sure there was some guilt there about leaving the royal family. She wasn't seeing the boys as much as she had. I think she was really desperately trying to find herself. She was starting to fall in love. Would that last? Who knows? But she was feeling it. I think she was a romantic person. I think she loved people. I think she was liking some of the fame. I mean, some of the exposure she had to famous people, which she enjoyed, the Elton Johns and various people that, well, Versace mentioned, people that she'd gotten close to or gotten a sense of. And it is, I've dealt with a fair number of famous people, and I grew up. I mentioned being on the Hudson River. I grew up farther up the Hudson River, a small town, and I consider it a blessing that I still look at the world through the eyes of some kid from Newburgh, New York.
Mhm.
And so I really I'm on a podcast. This is kind of cool, and we're talking about a book I wrote, and I get a kick out of that, and I get a kick out of knowing President Clinton and the Bushes and Dolly Parton, obviously, who I just wrote a book with too. We're doing a movie now, and but I really get a kick out of it, and I think Diana was enough of a real person and modest enough and real enough and grounded enough. I think she really got a kick out of these relationships that she had formed and was continuing to form with real people. And, not everybody, but a lot of us like that little applause. We come into a room and people are like, "Oh my God, it's you," and I think she got a lot of that, and I think she liked it. But I think it was a difficult period for her. I think it was very chaotic, and you would hope that she would kind of land with her feet on the ground. And as I said, I mean, that thing, I don't know if you've ever done it over in Europe, but occasionally we've had these drivers and they go like 100 miles an hour. And you're like, no, don't do that.
I was just in Europe last month, and I never get car sick, but I don't know if it was because they were driving so fast or we were on the quote unquote wrong side of the road. But I had to put my head down at one point in London. I think I was in London. And I completely understand. And we actually went to Paris as well and saw the site of Diana's accident. And speaking of Diana's accident, I never knew, I learned in your book, seriously, I think at this point, I know everything about the royal family. I learned tons from this book. I never knew that Diana's code name in the Paris hospital was Patricia, which was named for a patron saint of Naples who died young after sharing her wealth with the poor. So interesting. You write about a police officer seeing her pale face, her eyes closed, her eyelids seemingly made up with a night blue shade. I remember exactly where I was. I was only 10, but I remember exactly where I was on August 31st, 1997. Do you remember where you were the night?
Yeah, I do. And I remember, Sue and I both get up pretty early, but I was up earlier and I flipped on the news and I got the news. And then I had to stop and think because Sue really, I want to say she's close to Diana, but I mean, she had a feeling for her, as so many people do. And I'm going like, oh my God, I have to go tell Sue. It was like going to tell her that either a close friend or a relative had died, and that's hard. But I remember that. I never forget it. And then they're just going, and you don't want to scare the person either, so you need to sort of get it out. So I went and I held her hand for a second. I said hi, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but I told her very quickly that Diana had just died in a car crash. But I do remember it, very very clearly.
Was she just shocked?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like we all were.
She's still, I mean, and she's not a crazy person, and she tends not to, have these, crushes on movie stars or whatever. She's pretty down to earth. But with Diana, it was different for her. Yeah. And she still does. She still, has that, and I think a lot of us do. I mean, it's one of those things where you go like, why her?
Yeah, exactly.
Why then? It's one of the,
why then? Yeah. Why then?
I wrote a book on Lennon, John Lennon, and not the same, but for some people, I was at that time I was living in New York, and I was like 9 blocks away from the Dakota where he was living and where he was shot. And I went up there that night, and the crowd was already starting to form. And a few days later, they had a big memorial in Central Park, which Dakota is right there. And I remember actually a photographer friend of mine, Harry Benson, took a shot of this park, and some people were holding up this banner that just said "Why," and that captured the whole thing. Here's this, thousands of mourners, and just that thing. And I think that captures to some extent, with Diana. Why? I mean, it's like, not her. Don't let her die. There's plenty of people, if somebody's got to die, not her, somebody else, yeah.
In your writing, you tell us about plans for Diana to star in the sequel, The Bodyguard.
Yeah,
with
Kevin Costner. Yeah.
So had she lived to 1998, what else was next for her in life?
I think, once again, I said, I think, my sense of it is that she was in a little bit of chaos, and not like a lot of us. I mean, gee, second act, okay? And that first act was pretty amazing.
Mm.
And where do we go from there? I'm sure she would have done more with the charities. Maybe she would have gotten married. I'm sure she would have, spent a lot more time with the boys. And yeah, you hope you can handle the fame part well. We were talking earlier, and we'll see how Harry and Meghan do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And some people handle it well, and some people it's difficult. The Kevin Costner, our son Jack actually was in a class with his illegitimate. That's a terrible thing. With a son of his. Yeah. So that was. Yeah, I don't know where it would have gone, but I did just have a sense of her being in kind of disarray for a short time.
Yeah, figuring it out like we all do at certain points in life,
I haven't figured it out. Have you guys figured it out?
No, absolutely not.
Right.
Not even a little bit. So
every once in a while in a day, I said,
maybe
I'm starting
like
to,
one day.
And then the next day it's gone.
Yeah. I might figure it out for one day, and then for the other 6 of the week, no. But so as you said earlier, at the crux of this book is about Diana as a mom, which I agree. I don't think it's a story that has been told like this ever before. Her funeral was September 6th. Harry's 13th birthday was just about a week later on September 15th. So while Diana was in Paris, you write, before the crash, Diana bought Harry a PlayStation for his birthday, harkening back to 1997 and how popular that was. So it came down to Diana's older sister, Lady Sarah McCorkadale, to give Harry that makes me want to cry, to give Harry the PlayStation from his mom. That anecdote broke my heart. So from where
tough duty. Well, the thing also, just a visual that can break your heart is the 2 boys, walking to the funeral.
Oh my God. I just watched a documentary.
I mean, that's just one of those iconic scenes, and it captures so much. Yeah,
I just watched a documentary this weekend. It's coming out on HBO this upcoming weekend, the 13th, that I think you would like, Mr. Patterson, called The Princess. And it shows, of course, the funeral, and just they're just so young and just so vulnerable in that moment. But from where,
and you also see, once again, that just the power of not just of her, but of the crowd.
Yeah, absolutely.
So many people come out to these things.
And it's crazy.
It's so much a part of England.
Well, from where you sit, what is Diana's legacy 25 years after her passing?
Well, I think the legacy is really in that sense of living a good, joyful life and giving back. I mean, she's one of these people that made the most of her situation, even though the situation was not ideal in a lot of ways. She made the most of it. That's what you want to have happen. On some level, for some people, JFK did some of that, sort of making the best of whatever he could and giving back. And Dolly Parton, who certainly does a lot of that. She really gives back, and she brings that joy to life, which is very special. And I think, there aren't enough of those people, and Diana is certainly one of those. So I think we will treasure that for a long time.
Well, I know today we've mostly focused on Diana because it is getting close to August 31st. But I also want to mention that the book dives deep into the lives of William and Harry, both before and after her death. And at one point, you write about the brothers recreating a striptease scene from the film The Full Monty, calling it their party piece whenever they get together with friends. So knowing that they were once so close, does it hurt to see the brothers be so far apart today?
Well, it doesn't hurt me. I'm not that involved in it, but yeah, you would hope that at some point they hit been, so tight for so long.
Mhm.
And obviously, Will's committing to the crown and Harry stepping away. I guess that's created most of the friction. And you hope that they'll get back together again. It happens. It happens.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You see it all the time where whatever siblings, they just get past whatever and they remember the incredible things about one another. And and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, and you grow up with certain people but you see them as adults and you don't like the adults that much. It happens. So yeah.
Well, last question for you. What
Sure.
do you hope readers ultimately get out of this book?
To me, I was talking to our son recently about he's doing some banking stuff and he's making a lot of money. He's still a kid, but I said, "Are you enjoying it?" He said, "Not too much." And I said, we got this little blink of life on the earth, and if you're lucky enough to have the opportunity to have a joyful, happy life, man, grab it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes things get in the way, sickness and whatever, but if you have that opportunity, go for it. So I'm all for books that I write bringing joy into people's lives, and I hope this one does. I think it will.
It brought joy into my life. I read it in one sitting, and I rarely have time to do that anymore. But I booked away a Friday night and I said, this is my plans. And it was great. It was
well, it's
fantastic.
nice also. The reviews so far have been really nice too. And I have to believe a lot of people go, "Oh my God, another Diana book." And I think they're surprised. It's like, it's different than.
It is different. And like I said, if not to say that Jessica and I are know-it-alls, but if Jessica and I
think you are.
I mean, we study this day in and thank you. I'll take that compliment. But I learned not just one anecdote, but at least 5 to 10. And that's really saying something. So well done. Well done.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This is a very nice talk, and lots of luck with the podcast and the rest of life and Alabama.
The rest of life.
Which I do enjoy. I like Alabama. Books a million.
Yes. Thank you so much for being here. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Well, as we said earlier this summer, we had a huge guest that you might not think was in the royal adjacent world, but now it all makes sense. So it's James Patterson. What a great way to close this season, if you will. And I don't think I'll ever get over that. I think it's a great way to send off into our summer break.
I think so too. And I really hope listeners enjoyed that interview as much as we did. I know that they did. And he truly, we said this in the interview, but he truly has so much in that book that you've probably never heard before. Yeah. So go get it and definitely check it out.
Absolutely. All right, listeners, we will be back in mid-September. But until then, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Podcast Royal. Email us, please. We love getting your emails at hellopodcastroyal@gmail.com. And follow, rate, and review our podcast. 5 stars, please. We would really appreciate that. Thank you so much for tuning into episode 68 and all the others of Podcast Royal. Have a great month, and we'll see you very soon. Bye.
Bye.